You guys will soon come to know that Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate is my absolute favorite Monster Hunter title. I love everything about it. The dire moralis, the fact that my favorite monster, the Zinogre, made its debut in this generation, and yes, even the introduction of the most controversial Monster Hunter mechanic to date, underwater hunting. Now I'll be the first one to admit that underwater hunting has its problems. To put it bluntly, the entire thing is bare-boned. An arguably failed attempt at something that could have truly revolutionized the Monster Hunter franchise, and honestly that really disappoints me. One of my biggest pet peeves with developers in their games is that when a new system they've implemented isn't as positively received as they wanted, it's dropped completely. Don't get me wrong, it's totally understandable why this happens, as creators who constantly disregard fan input usually end up running their properties into the ground.
The other end who's saying these things directly to you and they're saying them directly to you, that's a whole other level of harassment, really.
But it also closes the door for an idea to reach its full potential. Swimming isn't coming back anytime soon. Both Capcom and the main Monster Hunter development team have stated so. Too many people just didn't like it. And as a part of the minority, I can respect that. Swimming in Monster Hunter has tons of room to grow, and Capcom just didn't deem it important enough to bring back. This is a topic I've thought a lot about and developed various solutions towards. So I thought that instead of sitting around and fantasizing about what could have been, I'd make a video detailing just that. So grab your paintballs, don your best armor, and gather your hunting party as we dive deep into Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate by attempting to fix the most vexing and frustrating aspect of monster hunting. I think it's fitting for us to begin this analysis by clearly defining what made underwater hunting the failure it was. As I stated before, I'm actually pretty fond of this mechanic and can only provide a limited scope of what was wrong to begin with. It's slow and it's a huge pain to effectively control. So in order to ensure this video covered as much ground as possible, I took to Reddit and reviewed some old threads to get a better idea of swimming's general reception. Surprisingly, I found a lot more people like swimming than I originally anticipated. That was really cool to discover. But this video is meant to be a critical analysis on what made swimming flawed, and so that's what I needed to focus on. I think the general consensus people had on the hunting style was that the depth perception was tricky, maneuvering was a pain, and the mechanic as a whole was pretty shallow and underdeveloped. This is something that definitely rings true with my experiences in the game, as I remember countless times when I was carded as a result of me having trouble judging my distance from the monster, controlling my hunter underwater, or me lacking sufficient quantities of my already limited underwater arsenal. However, something I didn't see while gathering information, but think many people can agree with, was that some of these underwater maps were just poorly designed. The best place for us to start is at the most important aspect of any video game, the controls/gameplay. To put it simply, hunting underwater sucks total jaggy dick sometimes. Doing something as simple as positioning yourself to face upwards or downwards towards the monster is a total chore, a truth that contradicts the very basis of Monster Hunter. See, all of the series' gameplay is centered around anticipation. During a hunt, the player is supposed to read the monster and determine when they should play offensively or defensively. This heavily relies on fluid control, as a player should be able to get out of tense situations not only using their quick reflexes and resourceful thinking, but also tight controls. While the former two are required to be an effective hunter, they're completely invalidated without the presence of the latter. Control is everything in a video game, and if hunting underwater plays like total shit, not many people are going to like it. The control scheme for underwater hunting is pretty simplistic and works as you'd expect it to. You move your hunter by changing the direction of the left analog stick and can dash in said direction by pressing the B button, but I think this simplicity is what makes the playstyle so unbearable to begin with. No matter how hard you try, your hunter never seems to go in the direction you want them to. If you want to dash upwards, they'll probably dash forward. If you want to swim away from the monster, they'll probably swim right towards it. Once you get used to the awkward timing, it's definitely a lot easier to dodge monsters' attacks, yet even so, I don't think controls should have the player adapt to them, but vice versa. I think the first revisions we should make towards swimming is the button layout. Obviously, some values should be tweaked to make the controls more responsive as a whole, but I also feel some changes to the control scheme are in order as well. first thing being the dash. The move should be split into two different inputs, one for dashing backwards and one for dashing in any other direction. Tapping the B button while holding the analog stick should cause your hunter to dash in the corresponding direction. On the flip side, holding B should cause your hunter to dash directly backwards, similar to the way the Lance's evade works. This should help eliminate some of the frustration with underwater movement, as giving the player more options subsequently gives them more control. If there's an input dedicated specifically to dashing forwards and backwards, whenever the player travels somewhere they don't intend to, it feels more like a mistake on their part rather than the game being unfair. The target cam should also be reworked while underwater, so that whenever you focus the reticle on a monster, your hunter's body pivots to face them directly, giving the player a better grasp on orientation and their distance from the monster. Another thing I feel worth mentioning is that moving underwater is really slow. Make it faster. I mean, the Monster Hunter franchise hasn't exactly been one known for abiding by the laws of physics, so I don't think it'd be too jarring to have them move faster underwater. Even if the development team isn't fond of this idea, it'd be completely reasonable for them to add a new type of armor that specifically allows you to swim faster underwater. Maybe flippers, a propulsion system, something to keep the action fast-paced and engaging. Combat underwater is a bit sluggish as well. Obviously, most weapons were reworked to compensate for the new range of attack available to the player, but a lot of these combos were basic and not very rewarding to pull off. I suggest they spend more time fleshing out the way these weapons work, giving them the same amount of depth they have on the surface. And while we're on the topic of movement, let's talk about where you're moving. The map specifically. Okay, real talk for a second. Flooded Forest sucks Bareth balls. Honestly, I have no idea why or how this map was okayed for the final version of the game. I mean, the inspiration behind hunting underwater in the first place was to give hunters the ability to hunt in 360 degrees without any limitations. So why would the developers design a map that only limits us? If we're constantly surrounded by walls that keeps us in close quarters to our target, how do you possibly expect us to have any control of this situation? As I said before, monster hunting at its core is all about anticipation and timing. There's no way we can do any of that effectively if we can't even put enough distance between ourselves and the monster to properly judge what it's going to do and prepare for an oncoming attack. I cannot stress this enough. We need big, sprawling maps to swim through. Deserted Island is the best example of a land-water hybrid map. We've got a huge ocean to swim through, with areas dedicated entirely to underwater combat and sections designed for your traditional land and air-based Monster Hunter monsters. It's big, diverse, and is home to a slew of different monsters and ecosystems. If this mechanic was ever to be reintroduced in a future Monster Hunter title, it is crucial most maps be designed this way. Hell, I'd even love to see more maps akin to Underwater Ruin being completely submerged. But returning to this idea of freedom, another aspect of underwater hunting that helped cripple the system was how limited our arsenal became after entering the blue. While on the surface, there's a myriad of ways a hunter could approach killing its target. Whether you wanted to bomb it or trap it, so much more was available to the player. Once again, a lot of that control is taken away once you're submerged. Yes, it makes sense you can't use pitfall traps or barrel bombs, but at the same time, it only leaves you a couple of options for completing an underwater hunt. There should be items designed specifically for underwater use. It's not logical to use a pitfall trap underwater, yes, so why not replace it with an ice trap? Once triggered, shards can erupt from a canister, encasing the monster in an icy prison. Barrel bombs won't light underwater? No problem. Just replace them with repercussion barrel bombs. As soon as they're set off, using some sort of remote detonation of course, they emit sound waves that in turn create water pressure strong enough to tear at a monster's flesh. And to avoid the issues of these specific items taking up too much space, set aside a special pouch dedicated primarily for use in the water. Making sure you allow the player to tackle any challenge however they see fit is crucial for an enjoyable Monster Hunter experience. Personally, I think the idea of extending the Monster Hunter universe to the ocean's depths is revolutionary. Not only does it open the door for exciting new ecosystems and unique monster designs, but when done right can make hunting an absolute pleasure. Despite all of my gripes with the swimming mechanic as it is, I still absolutely love it and find myself returning to 3U for those hunts specifically. And hopefully, in a future where everyone has had their Monster Hunter World 2s and Monster Hunter Triple Crosses, Capcom decides to revisit this concept and give it the love it truly deserves. It would be an absolute dream for me to be able to tackle this today once again, but this time in true HD.